Parrish,
Here.
Alderman Schneider, Alderman Nurbin,
Here.
and Mayor Worth.
Here. We have a quorum. In fact, we have everyone here. Thank you all for coming. The first item of business is a public hearing, a final resolution regarding industrial development revenue bond financing for COPS Industries. The Finance Personnel Committee recommended this to the council tonight unanimously. Do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of going into the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Mayor, I'm going to abstain for this item and item number 3. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. Did anyone register to speak, Madam Clerk?
No, nobody registered to speak.
All right. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The next item is that same matter, which was recommended to you by the council. The actual resolution to approve the bond financing. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Abstain.
I'm sorry, abstain, Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
and Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
The ayes have it. I don't know if anybody from COPS Industries on the online, but thank you for going ahead and building your new project in our community. The next item is public officials reports. I only have a brief one. Next week is our annual organizational meeting. I am continuing to look for several members to serve on the architectural board. I'm looking for a district representative from District 5 and District 8, as well as 2 regular members who the architectural board, as you may know, has a group of 5 people who are the board itself that vote on every item, and then 2 district representatives from every district. The architectural board, people tend to there tend to be more turnovers than Brett Favre had throwing the football in the architectural board. And I am going to ask public welfare to re-examine the composition of that board. But until that occurs, we do need to have a board to pass on new home applications. So if people know people who have an interest and are qualified, particularly from District 5 or 8, but also who can take on the bigger responsibility to serve as regular members of the board, I'd appreciate hearing from you. I have no other report this evening. Mr. Jones, the city administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the heft of tonight's agenda, I just have one item as well. As the council and some members in attendance here tonight know, over the last couple of weeks, the city has been partnering with Midland Health, a local vaccination company, to administer COVID-19 vaccines here at City Hall in the council chambers along Cedarburg Road. We've actually conducted 7 full-day clinics, including today, and over those 7 days, we've administered close to 1,300 first doses of both Moderna and Pfizer vaccine to both Mequon residents and other citizens living in communities in the general vicinity of Mequon. Starting next week, we will begin round 2 of these vaccine clinics, and those will extend into the next couple of weeks into early May, where everyone who came by for a first dose of vaccine will be administered a second shot and be on their way towards full inoculation. Just today, we had over 300 individuals come in to receive a first dose. Midland Health has additional doses on hand for the remainder of this week, and we will be meeting with their CEO tomorrow morning to likely plan 1 or 2 more clinics here before the end of the week so that we can get additional shots into additional arms here in the community. So a big thanks to Mayor Worth, who put us in touch with the CEO from Midland Health, and a big thanks to staff here on the city side and in the city administrator's office and in the Public Works Building Division for kind of pivoting on a dime and making this happen in rather short order. But at the end of the day, this has been a good thing for our community to do our part in terms of coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic and getting back to life as we knew it. So thanks again, and that's my update.
I would just add, thank you, Mr. Jones and Mr. Sheneman, who, while maybe I put Ms. Steinberg, who runs Midland Health, in contact with the city, they very quickly organized this, and it turned out to be a bigger project, I'm sure, than they anticipated. But I think it's turned out well, and it's a good thing for the city. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have 11 items of various minutes. Is there a motion to approve items A through J of the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 We have 4 first readings this month, which is a lot. I'll read through them quickly because that's what we do with first readings. The first one is ordinance 2021-1587, and this amends the zoning code to add micro distilleries and micro wineries as conditional uses in the town center zoning district. The Planning Commission will be addressing this later. No, the Planning Commission has recommended this item, the ordinance 2021-1588, and this is to add outdoor power equipment stores as a conditional use in the B5 zoning district. This has been recommended by the Planning Commission. Ordinance 2021-1589, and this amends the planned unit development for the property located at 10448 North Port Washington Road. This has been recommended by the Planning Commission. And finally, ordinance 2021-1590, and this allows the sale of intoxicated liquor for off-premises consumption pursuant to a recent state law change. Needs to be in sealed containers. And this was recommended this evening by the Finance Personnel Committee unanimously. Those will presumably all be taken up next month. The next item on the agenda is we're going to go into committee of the whole to hear from the Wisconsin Policy Forum about their feasibility analysis of the fire and EMS service sharing in Ozaukee County. Some of us may have participated in the kickoff meeting or kickoff presentation, but this allows those of you who couldn't to hear some of it as well as the public more broadly, although the public heard about that also. So I'd like to introduce Rob Henkin, who has, on behalf of Wisconsin Policy Forum, spearheaded this project. I would also point out that our city administrator, Will Jones, was instrumental in organizing staff members from the various communities in providing information and organizing meetings, as well as Chief Bialk was the fire chiefs throughout the county, spent a lot of time working with Mr. Henkin and providing information. I'd like to thank both of them. So without further ado, Mr. Henkin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Worth. Can you folks hear me okay?
I'm going to mute my microphone. Maybe that'll help you. If everyone else would do the same, that would be appreciated.
And Mayor, before Mr. Henkin gets going, I'm going to just kind of frame where we are, where we've been, and where we will likely be going in relation to this joint effort. As members of the council will recall, a contract and a memorandum of understanding was executed last June with the 9 other communities that participated in this study, and the analysis was launched shortly thereafter. Over the next 6 to 8 months, the report was researched and ultimately finalized, and as you mentioned, Mayor, presented last month to all of the elected officials across all of the 10 communities during a special joint meeting on March 11th. Since that meeting and publication of the report from the Wisconsin Policy Forum, Mr. Henkin and his team have been visiting each of the governing boards from the 10 communities that participated in the study to present findings to the respective communities and the residents and the citizens living in each of those communities, as well as to answer questions that may be more pertinent to a particular community. These meetings will continue into mid-May with a few of the communities that have not yet had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Henkin. And once each municipality has had a chance to have their own presentation, it is likely that each municipality that participated will be making decisions on how to proceed next. So I'm not sure if there will be a lot of discussion this evening. There's certainly an opportunity for members of the council to ask Mr. Henkin or the chiefs from the fire department any questions regarding any of the information that was contained in the report and in the report brief that was distributed about 30 days ago. And this will likely be a topic of discussion as we move into strategic planning here late in the second quarter, likely during the June to early July timeframe. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Henkin, and I will mute my mic as well.
I'm going to make one other comment and just a caution before we get going as far as our own discussion. Some of the communities that we may consider doing something with have not yet had an opportunity to have this presentation. If we have a lot of discussion about those communities this evening, preempting their opportunity to hear about it, it may impact how they view those opportunities. We don't want to be telling people that they ought to be joining us before they've had a chance to at least give it a little consideration. So I caution that we be cautious in how we frame our conversation after Mr. Henkin's done. Just a thought. Now I'll be quiet and let Mr. Henkin go.
Thank you, Mayor Worth. So can you folks hear me? I am having trouble with my sound, so I am both calling in and I can see you. So, okay, this is good. So first of all, thank you very much, Mayor Worth. Thanks to Will, to Chief Bielk, and really this has been a project where there's been a great deal of cooperation. Very impressive to see the extent to which the communities have been willing to grapple with these issues together. So I, again, just want to express my appreciation and appreciation for allowing me to present to you this evening. As the mayor said, I did a lengthy presentation last month when the report was rolled out. Since that time, I'm assuming that even those of you who are not able to tune into that one at least had a chance to review the report. So I am just going to go over some of the highlights very quickly, and then again would be happy to answer any questions or engage in any discussion with you. So I'm going to share my screen, and if Mayor Worth, if you could just give me a thumbs up, or Will, actually I can see you now. Can you see my screen okay? Okay, great. So here's the report cover. Again, the report titled First Response. Just wanted to start by summarizing some of the key issues that really emerged. The first several months of this process was collecting, synthesizing, crunching data from each of the 9 departments in Ozaukee County that participated in the study. And as a result of all of that data collection, analysis, and synthesis, a few very important key findings emerged. Number one is, as you can see from this slide, call volumes in Ozaukee County are growing. That is essentially across the board in terms of all of the departments. You can see that Mequon's call volume certainly showing among the most rapid growth between 2015 and 2019 of any of the departments that were part of the study. Lots of reasons for this. Certainly population growth. While your area is seeing population growth, it's not anything that's too rapid that would be causing this type of call volume increase. But that could be one factor. The fact that the population is aging certainly is a contributor to growing EMS call volume. The increased commercial development in Mequon may be another factor. So we don't really get at why, but what's important here is that for each of the departments, call volumes are growing. Another key early takeaway from all of the analysis about not only the data on things like call volumes and response times, but also on the way the departments are structured and organized and staffed. A very striking characteristic of Ozaukee County, each of its departments, and this is not necessarily a good or a bad striking element, but what is striking is the staffing models used. In your county, as you folks know full well for your department, there is pretty strong reliance on part-time paid-on-call staff and very little reliance on full-time staff who are situated at station locations, essentially there waiting for calls to come in. Now, again, you can't put a value judgment on that necessarily. Clearly, the way that you staff your department and whether you have full-time staff at stations is dependent upon the call volume. It depends upon things like geography. It's dependent upon how much financial capacity you have. And really, it can also be a factor of prioritization among the various city or village services. But what we see in degree of full-time staffing, and that may be problematic not only for things like response times, which we'll discuss in just a moment, but also because we heard from each and every one of the chiefs that increasingly that type of staffing model is becoming more and more difficult to sustain. Here you are not alone. We have done studies throughout the state of Wisconsin over the past 5 or 6 years, and I can say to you that every department that is heavily reliant on part-time paid-on-call staffing is now thinking very seriously about what, if anything, it may need to do to make sure that that model can continue. It is just simply becoming more and more difficult, particularly during daytime hours when call volumes are highest, to maintain sufficient numbers of part-time staff who can be called in at a moment's notice from home or work to respond to a call. As you can see, when we look at the 9 departments here, Grafton is really the one at the time that we were doing the research for this study that could be sort of characterized as a combination department that has a combination of both part-time paid-on-call and full-time staff. And I would say that the Mequon Fire Department now would fall into that categorization as well as a result of the actions that you took in your 2021 budget. So once those positions are filled, we would deem you to be combination. But again, in communities your size, and I'll show you a slide in just a second, it's potentially or it's hypothetically more common to see greater usage of full-time staff. Response times. There's no real standard here that I could share with you. If you were to say to me or say to your chief, you know, what should your average response time for an EMS call be? I think that would be a very difficult question to answer. Response times are based on staffing models, of course. They're based on geography. They're based on lots of factors. Typically, what we would see in suburban communities are average response times in the 7 to 8 minute range for Mequon, and these are 2019 numbers. This is bound to improve in 2021 because of the actions that you took in your 2021 budget. As you can see, your average EMS response time about 9.5 minutes. Really, Grafton is the one that is coming in where perhaps we would have expected to see from communities of this size with this type of call volume. But again, this is there's no way that I can say to you, here's where you should be. And quite frankly, in areas with low call volumes, it doesn't make sense to have a sufficient number of full-time staff on full-time shifts to improve these call volume levels. It just wouldn't be cost efficient to do so. But I think the takeaway here is that some of these, in some of the communities, we would certainly see an opportunity for improvement. Finally, and this is no secret, and let me caution you that, again, this is older data. This is actually 2018 data. What we wanted to do was just take a look at the 3 cities in Ozaukee County, compare your fire and EMS per capita spending with several other communities that are similar in size and demographics to your 3 cities in the county, including the city of Mequon, just to look at that per capita fire and EMS spending. And as you can see, the 3 Ozaukee County communities very much on the low end. And again, that is a function of the fact that all of these communities have a much greater degree of full-time staffing. Onalaska, we just did a study on La Crosse County. Onalaska is one that sort of has a hybrid model of basically a half and half mix of full-time and part-time staffing. The rest of these communities all have basically exclusively full-time staffing. Now, again, your per cap number would go up if we took into account what happened in your 2021 budget. So as a result of this, 4 key observations. Number 1, as I said, reliance on paid on-call staff for EMS is becoming highly problematic, and that's especially the case during weekdays and times of high call volumes. Response times could be improved in general, and there are times when some departments are unable to simply assemble sufficient staff to respond. That happened with increasing frequency over the last couple months of 2020. Now, Mequon is not a department that experienced that phenomenon, and that's an issue too, because for those departments that are not experiencing this difficulty, you are being called on increasingly to cover for your neighbors. And so that's just not a healthy situation for anybody when that occurs. We observed that the communities in the north may have different needs and expectations than the communities in the south. So as we were called in to look at what might consolidation options be, you have to take this into account. What may be right for Mequon and Grafton and Cedarburg and Thiensville, for example, certainly may not be right in terms of a staffing model for the Wabacas and Belgiums and Fredonias. And so as we think about options going forward, that's just something important to recognize. Finally, it's not clear if elected officials and citizens are aware of the service gaps and challenges out there and what it would take to fill them. Now, I do not include your council and the city of Mequon necessarily in that statement. You have obviously done some very rigorous analysis over the past few years, not only in terms of this study, but in terms of previous work that you have done to identify those gaps and challenges. But I think for the most part, we did not see a similar recognition necessarily among some of the other communities. That said, even if there is that recognition, and even if there is broad consensus to act together and to try to address some of these challenges by spending more money, there are some practical considerations here in terms of levy limits and expenditures restraint limits that may pose challenges to doing so. So I think that's a lot of the important information and observations I wanted to cover. Very briefly, let me just summarize again how we constructed our options. We divided them up into 3 tiers, moving progressively from sort of least comprehensive, least intensive in terms of planning and collaboration to more comprehensive, more expensive, and more intensive in terms of implementation. So in terms of tier 1, sort of some near-term options, we looked at a paramedic supplement option where hypothetically there would be 4 paramedics stationed 24/7 throughout Ozaukee County, strategically located in Tahoe-type vehicles who could respond and supplement that paramedic response that's currently going on in terms of by the various departments and whoever they're relying on in terms of neighboring departments, and give you that extra level of paramedic support that seems to be increasingly needed at certain times when there are multiple calls coming in and other times of high call volume. We also looked at sort of what could the 9 departments do if they wish to maintain their independence, just to increase staffing to a level where, again, the projected future volume of calls, as well as the call volumes during these busy times, could be properly accommodated. So just a couple more details. Would these cost money? Absolutely they would. Could you start smaller? Here too, absolutely you could. So I mentioned we modeled an option which would have 4 full-time 24/7 paramedics stationed throughout the county. Perhaps you could start with 2 or 3. But for argument's sake, we costed this out as about a $1.4 million extra cost. In terms of that option 2, here on this map, you can see what it would look like. So just taking your stations as an example, what would happen is that there would be 2 full-time people on a 24/7 basis ready to respond. That means at each of your stations or at the Thiensville station. In this case, you would not have to have full-time staffing at all 3 of the stations, the 2 Mequon and Thiensville stations. So for the second one, it could either be Thiensville or it could be Mequon 1. For argument's sake, we modeled it with the 2 Mequon stations having 2 per shift. That means each could send out an ambulance without having to call anybody in, but to send out an engine to respond to a fire call, you would still have to use paid on-call staff. If you did that at several other stations throughout the county, hypothetically speaking, you could enhance your response times and you could be better prepared to respond to the call volume that you're receiving. Our next tier we called partial consolidation options. We took a look at a 2-way consolidation between Grafton and Saukville, just as a hypothetical illustration. We also looked at a model in which you would have go down from 9 Ozaukee County departments to 2, 1 in the northern part of the county and 1 in the southern part of the county. Under the Grafton-Saukville consolidation, which we modeled because right now they are essentially sharing Chief Rice, we looked at what a minimum level of full-time staffing would be at each of their stations. What we found is that these are staffing enhancements that potentially may have to occur even if the 2 stations maintain their independence. But by consolidating, a couple of good things could happen. Number 1, you could eliminate the need for a part-time Saukville chief. You could see some savings on some apparatus. There would be various ways to allocate the cost that I'm not going to get into. But essentially what you're getting from a 2-way consolidation is an added cost, because it takes into account the fact that added staffing is likely to have to happen anyway, but the opportunity to create greater efficiencies. There are certainly several other 2-way or even 3-way consolidation options that could be looked at. We just looked at one for illustrative purposes. Again, there's an added cost, but that added cost would be reduced from what the cost would be if the 2 departments acted independently to achieve the same level of staffing. Finally, just wanted to show you on a map what the north and south department scenarios would look like. In this case, our model really ramped up staffing to a level that in all likelihood you would not need to get to at first, but maybe something that you would strive to get to over a series of years. This would really start to approach the level of service that the North Shore Fire Department just to your south is providing to its citizens. Again, we're not suggesting that you need and that your call volumes merit that level of service, but in terms of just modeling what going down from 9 to 2 would look like, those are the assumptions that we made. Obviously here too, the increased cost would be substantial. Right now, for the southern department, current spending is about $3.7 million annually. That would have to grow to $6.4 million. That's a lot of money. It would be shared between multiple communities. And as you can see, when you look at the increased cost per capita, perhaps it seems a little bit more reasonable to you, but that's in the eye of the beholder. Again, there's no question that reaching this level of service is going to cost more. Finally, I mentioned we did model 2 single consolidated departments for Ozaukee County. Given the differences between the northern and southern parts of the county, not sure that this option is one that you would want to take a look at. We looked at both a higher price and a lower price model just to illustrate that for you. So just to conclude, again, the main takeaways from this report, the 9 departments certainly share intensifying challenges. We believe they merit immediate consideration. Your council has already given these issues very stringent consideration. But I think one of the other messages here is that collaborating on these mutual challenges may indeed be more cost-effective and more efficient from a service level perspective, as opposed to each of the communities looking to ramp up on its own. Without question, each of these options would require substantial additional taxpayer contributions. That's not necessarily surprising given the current low levels of support. We believe that some sizable increased investment is warranted. And again, that's not just to address service level challenges, but also to ensure equity. So I've given that as a blanket statement. It sort of applies differently to each of the communities. But again, when we take a look at where some sizable investment has already been made, we see the city of Mequon, we see the village of Grafton. One of the issues here is whether your two departments are going to be leaned on more heavily by the others that have not yet made those investments. Again, I would attest that's obviously not necessarily a good thing for you, but also for those communities to have to be more reliant on neighbors than perhaps they would otherwise want to be, and to also incur the increased response times by having to rely on a neighboring jurisdiction is also not necessarily the best approach for them. Finally, as I mentioned, if the options that we laid out here are deemed too expensive, there are various ways that some of these could be phased in, and that you could start slowly and build toward more comprehensive approaches. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen if I can hopefully figure out how to do that. As I'm figuring this out, I would be happy to answer any questions that any of you have.
Alderman Schneider. But you got on mute.
I'm on it. Okay. Thank you very much for that presentation. You know, I fully agree that response time is an important metric, and there's two components to it. One of which is turnout time, which you referenced you couldn't give us a specific number that might be a goal to shoot for, but I'm assuming that in full-time departments, there is some metric that people go by for expected turnout time with a fully staffed department, and what would that be?
So it's a great question. So let me just use the North Shore Fire Department as an example. Their goal is 5 minutes total response time. So combined turnout and travel time. Their goal is for 90% of their EMS calls to have a response within 5 minutes. And they have been meeting that goal in recent years. For more urbanized departments who rely on that full-time, exclusively full-time staffing model, that is typically the goal. The other thing I can tell you is that the last time that there was a statewide survey, the average response time across the state, all departments, was about 8 minutes.
I'm trying to get you to break out the turnout time, and the reason I'm asking that specific question is because we have a little bit more control over that variable than we do our enormous geographic area, which requires long travel time. So I'm going to just ask you again, can you be any more specific about what sorts of goals departments have in terms of turnout times? And I'm talking about departments that do have a fully staffed department with people on site.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if Chief BL can help me with that. The reason I'm struggling is because it really depends, you know, the bigger variable obviously is the travel time, and it depends how many stations you have and how big a geographic area you have to cover. I would imagine the turnout time shouldn't be any lengthier than 2 to 3 minutes or so for a department that has full-time staffing, but I'd yield to the chief if he has any insight into that question.
And I will defer to Chief Zellman because in West Dallas, they went through an accreditation process where that was defined. So Chief.
Turnout time for an EMS run at a full-time department is usually benchmarked at 1 minute. So from the time the tones come in till the time the rig is departing the station is 1 minute. In a fire situation, it's usually 1 minute and 45 seconds. From the time the tones come in till the time the firefighters are fully geared up and seated and belted in the rig, 1 minute and 45 seconds, they're leaving the door.
Thank you, Chief Zellman. I really appreciate it. And I do want to point out, since the larger document did highlight North Shore's department for obvious reasons, it's close to us and they did consolidate. But the document referenced that Ozaukee County is 10 times larger than the area covered by North Shore. And I just want to mention, because you're speaking to people that live in Mequon, Mequon is twice the size by themselves as North Shore is. North Shore Fire Department has 5 fire stations in an area that's half our size. So we will never be able to achieve that level of service from a travel time, in my estimation, because we are really a mixture of a suburban and a rural community. So our 2 fire stations are in the southern part of Mequon, which services the larger portion of our population, but we do have a lot of folks that are living in a much less dense area in which it's not possible to put a fire station because there are not enough people living there to support it. So we are going to be under some geographic challenges as we look at response time in totality. I think the turnout time is something we can improve. We have some abilities in that way, but I won't talk anymore, but I just want to kind of pull those 2 pieces apart as we look at response times for Mequon.
Good point. Anybody else? Oh, come on, somebody's got to have some comments. Oh, Alderman Parrish.
I'll always ask a good question. Hopefully it's good. If we go with paramedic option 1, the paramedic supplement, does that have any effect whatsoever on response times, or is that just addressing a separate issue?
So I think the answer is it depends. Depends on how many and where they're located, et cetera. But I think for a pulseless non-breather, especially if, say, your department is in a situation where there are multiple calls at the same time, I think having a paramedic who could get to the scene, within 5 to 10 minutes would certainly be, could be a nice add-on for in terms of service quality. I think, in terms of a low volume time, once you are fully staffed up to your level, again, I think the Chiefs, Bielk and Zellman could answer that question better than I could. I think that where that option really is most important is some of these other communities where they are having trouble getting out an ambulance when a call comes in at certain times of day. And so, there are situations where, Thiensville was reliant on Grafton to send an ambulance. And so if you had a paramedic nearby who could at least get to the scene and provide that backup, or even do an intercept, again, there are possibilities for improvement there. To me, that's an option that really could help with those times when there are multiple calls and times of high call volumes. But again, I'd be interested in hearing what your professionals would have to say about that question as well.
Okay.
Chief or Chief? Any thoughts, either one of the chiefs?
Well, the option of placing other paramedics throughout the county, without a doubt, more people in the field, it's helpful. We have that first responder program that we use in Mequon to get at least an EMT to your door as quick as possible, which is helpful. So it would have to be integrated with that, with our first responder program where the paramedics were stationed. We now, with our deputy chiefs we hired, we'll basically have 2 paramedics on by themselves, probably one on one each side of town for most of the days.
Thank you. Other comments? Well, I'll tell you what, it's more of a comment than a question. A couple of comments. First, because we had the Future of the Fire Department study, some of what Mr. Hankins talked about, we've heard about before. So I think it's important to put it into context that maybe some of this isn't as new as we would have liked some more new information, but other communities didn't have any of this information. I'm also not sure how much the public heard it, so there's a value to the more opportunities we can let the public understand the situation, the better we can plan in the future. But also, if we're going to have any opportunities to discuss engaging with nearby communities, it's important it's important that everybody has some comparable information and that we know what other communities are, their pros and cons, and where we're at as a starting point of discussion. And while I don't want to comment about individual communities, because I really do believe it's premature since they haven't had their discussion, I do hope that we can have discussions with at least communities on this end of the county, because I think there's some opportunities for efficiencies, like, do we need every station there currently is on this side of the county, or could there be some savings there? Some savings as far as apparatus, where there's duplication of purchase of equipment. Strategic planning, which is kind of what Mr. Henkin has emphasized here. You can plan and make sure you've got coverage, but I think maybe, and I heard Mr. Henkin talk about this before, but in his shorter presentation tonight, it didn't quite get in there. If you have multiple communities working together, you don't need to find as many volunteers or paid on call people per community to staff individual stations. And if one of our great concerns is the ability to attract paid on call firefighters, or more importantly, ambulance personnel in the future, all of these other communities have that problem too. And if we're all chasing a finite resource, that may be difficult, but also it may be that a group of 2 or 3 or 4 communities doesn't need to find quite as many as each of those communities would individually. And so if one of our goals is to maintain a paid on call, at least a partial paid on call system going forward, for as long as that type of system works for our community, and to improve response times, the better staffing pool we have allows us to maintain that. And if that means that, one of our stations is staffed during some period of time by somebody who would have otherwise been employed or live in a different community, but based on the pool of employees you have, you can move them around a little bit between departments, the better off our community will be. So I think this is an important first step. And again, while I don't want to call out other communities and say we really should do this with X, I hope other communities consider that. We've had a track record of being able to work with other communities well, and I think we could in this venture also. Some of those early statistics, we had much higher numbers, but if you did it on a per capita basis, it might look a little bit different. Like, for example, call volume. I don't know if our increase on a per capita basis is, or a percentage basis is, if that bar graph quite showed it correctly. But I think that this was an important first step. It might not answer all the questions some of us thought we'd get answered ultimately, but that was simply maybe we had the wrong expectation. I think it does allow for a common base of knowledge among the various communities in Ozaukee County, and that's an important starting point. Sorry, I went on too long, but I think this is a really important issue for our community going forward, because I think at some point we may be shocked and have to go to his stage 4, where even if we don't want to go to a full-time department. At least many of us don't. Alderman Schneider.
I would say, and I'm not mentioning any other communities at all, but some other communities may have a station closer to our northern reaches than our own station. So that might be a possible. I'm I'm still working on this response time idea because it is something that I think is such a challenge here.
Well, but I think the response time by doing something at individual stations appropriately spaced out. And one of the things we're going to be talking about in strategic planning is our existing stations, and where they should be and what we should have, and that may improve response times also if we do that appropriately in the future. Other comments? If not, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Henkin.
Thank you.
It was a fine presentation, and you distilled it well in a shorter period of time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I just wanted to say our son and daughter-in-law just purchased a home in Mequon. So they very much look forward to joining your community.
Welcome to them.
Are they near a fire station?
Fire department.
Yeah, join the fire
No comment.
department, and are they near a station?
They're actually, the answer to both is probably no. So, relatively near a station, right near us. Yeah, I live in Bayside, so they're moving actually to the southern part. So we're thrilled.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
We will move on. The next item of business is the one ordinance on the agenda tonight. And this is an ordinance to amend the zoning code, actually chapter 82, I'm wrong, to reflect current roadway names and posted speed regulations. Public Safety Committee recommended this. And we had a first reading last month. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
There's a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item of business, it's to authorize a Fifth Amendment to the development agreement for the residents at Foxtown. The Planning Commission recommended this in our March meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Does anybody have any questions first? Hearing none, anybody have a motion? I saw Alderman Urban's hand up and maybe Alderman Boucher's. No, is there a motion? There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The next item is a resolution amending the comp plan to eliminate the police department's communications record supervisor position and establish an administrative coordinator position. It would be at a higher grade, but it reduces the number of personnel from 2 to 1. The Finance Personnel Committee recommended this to you this evening unanimously. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I heard a motion and a second. Questions or comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Urban.
Aye.
And Alderman Stralchek.
Aye.
That passes. The next item of business is to authorize the execution of an amendment for the Mid-Moraine Municipal Court Agreement. The Finance Personnel Committee recommended this unanimously. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I heard a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The next item is Resolution 3823, which approves an agreement with the Waukesha County to collect the delinquent and largely written off personal property taxes. The Finance Personnel Committee recommended approval this evening. Is there any questions on this item before Alderman Schneider?
I just, a quick question. It's a little peripheral, but it mentioned in the packet that there was legislation on the state level to potentially change the rules for personal property taxes. Are you on, Caitlin? Can you explain that to me?
Sure. There's current legislation going through at the state level to remove any taxation on personal property. over the past several years, you may recall there has been the write-off, like computers are exempt at the moment. Quite a few different categories have been made exempt over the years. The legislation currently is to remove the rest of the categories of personal property. So it's at the state level. What the state is hoping to do is put in the budget the amount of taxation that we currently do for personal property. We'd be made whole, so we would end up getting that chunk of money from the state, just like we have in the past with the exempt computer aid, things like that. So as of right now, it's just legislation. It's going through all of the different channels, but that's about all we have at the moment. We're not sure how far it'll go, because this has been brought up in the past.
Thank you.
But there is some bipartisan support for this, and the personal property tax compliance with it is incredibly expensive across the state for the people who pay it to pay on an individual property tax payer basis relatively nominal amounts of money. So cities should be made whole under the current legislation, but it would get rid of the personal property tax. I'm repeating Caitlin, I'll shut up. So anyhow, we're going to ask, if this passes, we're asking Waukesha County to take our old bad debts, and they have a department that can do that and see if they can collect part of it. We have a motion and a second. No, is there a motion, please?
Move to approve.
And we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll. I guess this does involve the expenditure of money, kind of.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
and Alderman Bushy.
And that passes. The next item is Resolution 3824. It's to designate Port Washington State Bank as the city's public depository. The Finance Personnel Committee recommended this evening. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
I heard a motion and a second. Is there any questions or any discussion? Or does anybody want any information on how we got here? Hearing none, please call, no, we don't need to call roll. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Excuse me, the ayes have it. The next item is Resolution 3825, which accepts final dedication of certain public improvements and reimburses Foxtown for those improvements pursuant to our contract with them. This is before us because to accept dedication of improvements, we have to vote on it. The Finance Personnel Committee has recommended approval. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
and Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And the ayes have it. The next item, Resolution 3818. This is to approve a contract with SMB Landscape Contractors for baseball field management services at Renicky and Schmidt Fields for this year. It was reviewed by the Park Board on March 17th. I don't know if it was recommended, but what did Public Works do with it this evening? Alderman Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. We voted 3-0 to recommend this. And I would make a motion to approve here this evening.
There's a
Second.
second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
and Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3826. This is to approve an agreement, an amendment to the agreement with both the DOT and the county regarding the Highland Road interchange. Alderman Parrish, what did Public Works do with this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. We recommended approval of resolution 3826. It was a 3-0 vote. I would make a motion for that here tonight.
Second.
A motion and a second. I would like maybe Ms. Lundin to give us, or whoever would be the appropriate person, just to a brief explanation, since I think there's a great deal of interest in what's going on with this interchange. If you could update the council and anybody who happens to be watching.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor. The agreements that are before you are mostly administrative. Both agreements, the state municipal agreement with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation and the intergovernmental agreement with Ozaukee County, were previously approved. The majority of the changes are administrative. You may recall that we originally approved 2 separate agreements, one for design and one for construction. WSDOT is looking to make some efficiencies on their side administratively to consolidate those agreements. So the fiscal responsibility remains the same, is not otherwise impacted, and is capped as it was in the original agreement. The majority of the changes impact the project ID number and the allocation of how the funds will otherwise be administered on WSDOT side. But again, the local share portion remains the same.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
And that passes. The next item is Resolution 3827. This is for an HVAC maintenance contract for the next year. Public Work, Alderman Parrish, what did Public Works do with this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. We recommended 3-0 to approve resolution 3827. I'll let someone else make the motion.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's good to share. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
and Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
And that passes. Whoops, was that everybody? Well, that was a sneeze at the end. I thought it was another vote. The next item, Resolution 3828, and this is a resolution to purchase a 9-wheel rubber tire roller. It's used. I'm surprised at how expensive they are. What did Public Works Committee do with this item?
Thank you, Mayor. And there were multiple bids, and we did recommend approval of this item 3-0. This is resolution 3828.
I wasn't being critical when I said that. I just was surprised. So we have is that a motion?
Yes,
Or you-
sir. It's a
Is there a
motion.
second? Second from somebody? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
and Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
And we're rolling. That passes. Resolution 3829, and this is to repeal the 2021 Pool and Parks policy and establish a new one for this year. Public Works, what did you do? And then we'll ask Ms. Lundin to give a brief presentation.
Well, if she's giving the presentation, I don't want to give too much of it. I would say that there were 4 options given in your packet. The committee was unanimous in its approval of the first option, which was to approve the resolution as proposed, which transitions from the restrictions included in the 2020 policy towards full reopening. So as a result, that would essentially repeal everything, all the COVID restrictions we've had. It would put in place standard operating procedures. It would terminate kind of over time. We'd be following the Ozaukee and Washington County Public Health Departments. So essentially, we were all in favor of proceeding with the proposed resolution for these standard operating procedures as written. There would be a park hopper. Pretty much everything that was here before is back in accordance with COVID guidelines. So we approved it 3-0, and I would pause and let Director Lundin fill in any gaps there.
Is that an adequate description, Ms. Lundin, or do you need to say something more?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hang around for questions, but let's see if there's a motion first. Or does anybody have any questions before we get to a motion? Then we'll have a motion, then we'll have discussion. Alderman Boucher.
Couple questions. One is Ozaukee going to update, to look at the 2020 standard? Are there plans to update that to 2021? And the second question I had is, do we have a sense of what other nearby communities are going to be doing regarding their pools?
I know that all the super pass pools, which includes the Village of Grafton, the City of Cedarburg, and the City of Port Washington, are all opening their pools. So those are our contemporaries in the super pass. So they are all otherwise opening. I'm confused on your question about Ozaukee County.
You said that that you're looking at their 2020 standards regarding pools. And I was wondering if that was being updated, the 2020 policies previously implemented.
No,
Unless
we're referring, the only restriction refers to their capacity guidelines, and they update those. Well, it's otherwise set based upon the case burden. So as the case burden, I'm making sure I go in the right direction. As the case burden reduces, then the capacity allowance would increase. And that's what was otherwise incorporated into the 2020 policy. But the capacity is really the only restriction that would remain. The majority of the rest are best management practices and not actual restrictions on use.
That answer your question?
Yes.
Good. Other questions? We have a motion. Alderman Bergman. Pursuant to the Public Works Committee recommendation of option 1, is that correct?
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
And Alderman Irvin.
And the changes are made. Resolution, now we're going into the road stretch of our meeting tonight, roads and concrete. I'm happy to see that there's a lot that's going to be done this year in a bunch of neighborhood roads. But anyhow, Resolution 3830, this is to award a bituminous seal contract. The recommendation from Public Works was?
Thank you, Mayor. We approved this 3-0, and I would make a motion for that here this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Seal coating's a big deal. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
and Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3831, this is our crack sealing contract. I like the name of the contractor, Thunder Road. They should get special consideration just for the name. And Public Works, did you recommend that this evening, Alderman Parrish?
Yes, sir. Recommendation 3-0 by Public Works. Make a motion for approval here this evening.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
and Alderman Bushy.
And that passes. The next item is the big item, and that's to improve Resolution 3832, and that's the 2021 road improvement contract. Public Works, Alderman.
Yeah, I'm Brian.
What'd you do?
Yes, sir. Not much discussion on this. There was unanimous approval, 3-0. I'll pause and let someone else ask a question or make the motion.
Questions or motion? Somebody.
I move resolution 3832 for approval.
Yes. Thank you, Alderman Hancher. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion about the roads we're going to improve this year? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
And Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And that passes. Alderman Parrish, by the way, I got all of a sudden panicked that I didn't print off the 5th page of my agenda. And so I was looking for it and gapped out on your name. I apologize. The next item, Resolution 3833, and this is a contract to do Rotary parking lot improvements. And Alderman Parrish, what did you do with that?
Thank you, Mayor. We had unanimous approval, 3-0 on this. I would make a motion to approve Resolution 3833 here tonight.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, or comments? Hearing none. Oh, Alderman Nervin.
Just a question. It indicated that the lowest bid was a significant savings to our anticipated budget. Are we planning on taking on more scope with something else and fixing something else that is also in desperate need of repair? I know we have a lengthy list of such items.
Yes, Alderman Nervin, thank you. We will otherwise be looking to make at least some patches of repairs at the public safety building, and we will continue to look at that at the brush site. Unfortunately, some of the other parking lots will be impacted by some of the WISTOT work, the dog park and things like that. But yes, we will certainly look to make use of every dollar that was otherwise allocated.
Okay, thanks.
I would be cautious about doing too much of public safety until we know what we're going to do with the building, but still good ideas. Did we have a motion on this? Yes, we did. We had a motion and a second. Other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
And that item passes. The next item, Resolution 3834, This is to replace the street lights in Phase 1 of the Mequon Business Park. Alderman Parrish, what did Public Works Committee say?
Thank you, Mayor. Unanimous approval, 3-0 for Resolution 3834. I would make a motion to approve here this evening.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Alderman Meyer and then Alderman Schneider.
Yeah, just a quick question. Are these original replacement lights? I mean, are they going to be corresponding to the ones we have, like the last phase of the lighting on it? Or is this the beginning of replacement of all of them?
No, actually, the other half of the business park is already on We Energy's light system. This is the only half of the business park that is not. So we will actually be transitioning towards to match the rest of the business park.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Schneider.
Question is answered then. I had a question regarding that, but my question is answered.
Great. Love to kill two birds with one stone. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher
Aye.
and Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
And that passes. There were a couple of dramatic pauses there. I don't know if people were thinking. The next item, Resolution 3835. And this would exceed the Public Works Equipment Replacement Capital Account for 2021 in order to purchase a new loader vehicle and snowplow with wing attachments. Public Works, Alderman Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. So ultimately on this one, the Public Works Committee recommended approval, 3-0. There was a decent discussion about this topic. We had the administrator weigh in and Director Lundin. Essentially, this is $225,000 for a large piece of equipment that we weren't originally planning for when the budget year started, not to say we didn't need it. And we all agreed it was, a difficult snow year with heavy depreciation on our equipment. There could be other equipment nearing the end of its useful life, and it's important if we're not going to outsource, which is not a goal of the program, that we need to keep our fleet operational. We felt that staff laid out a clear and compelling case for savings, for utilization of staff, for doing this now versus waiting for a subsequent budget cycle. So I'd welcome any other commentary from staff on this matter or questions.
But first, so we have a recommendation 3-0. Is there any questions of staff? Is there a motion? Alderman Meyer.
No, let me just make a comment on this. As it is probably in the car business, as it is in construction equipment right now, I think the city purchasing something at this time is going to be paying for something at extremely high purchase price compared to something in a year from now. Could be wrong, but the constraints that are on all manufacturers at this present time has thus catapulted the prices on everything. I may not vote for this in that fact because of that. I think we'll probably be paying a premium price no matter what we paid at this time, compared to what might possibly be paid in a year from now for that. And we are subsequently almost a full year out from any type of snow use for this. Now, if there's subsequent other uses for it, and I might be able to see something like that, but this larger expenditure, I firmly believe we'll be paying top dollar for this thing, and I don't think we need to do that at this point.
Director Lundin.
Thank you. This is simply the request to overspend the budget. We haven't otherwise gotten quotes or bids for the actual equipment purchase. So Alderman Meyer, if we find that what you're otherwise indicating is correct and that there's a large increase, then we likely wouldn't ultimately recommend the purchase. What we were really doing was looking at the allocation that we have and the equipment that is otherwise needing and recognizing that our needs for this year exceed the budget. So what we were looking for was the signal from the Common Council to be able to overspend the budget. When the actual recommendation for purchase was made, we would address both whether or not we were able to get an equitable price and source the funding for it. We just would otherwise potentially make a different decision on the allocation of purchases this year if it was not otherwise authorized. I will clarify that while the loader is presented as a means of efficiency for snow removal, it is a piece of equipment that we would utilize year-round in other operations as well.
So to be clear, this is coming back to us to approve any actual purchase. This is a signal that you can go out and bid it.
Correct. We just, again, we would potentially make a different decision on the order and allocation of how we would spend the budget we do have if there wasn't a willingness to overspend. But if there is, then we would at least go forth and look at the equipment that we otherwise listed in the memo, and then there would be a subsequent approval for the actual purchase and sourcing of the overage.
At that point, I hope you compare what this would have cost a year ago to what it costs now.
Yes, to the extent practical, we can do that. And obviously, depending on what we see for pricing, we may have to look at different options as well.
Alderman Nurbin, I think you had your hand up next.
Let me repeat that back differently, but said just a different way, and maybe for the benefit of everyone listening. Purchasing this equipment now is a higher priority for us at this point in time than the list we had anticipated 6 or 8 months ago when we started developing the budgets, based off of information we've learned since then.
Well, yes and no. So the funding that we otherwise receive is for equipment replacement. So we take an older piece of equipment and replace it with a newer one. This one would actually be adding a piece of equipment. Due to the snowfall this last year, we saw every piece of equipment that we possibly have for snow removal out on the street, and we weren't at full staff. And if we're otherwise able to be at full staff in order to be able to utilize all of our resources, we need additional equipment. So this would be the purchase of an additional piece of equipment, not a replacement of an existing piece of equipment, that would allow us to not only have more efficient snow removal operations, but to increase the capacity of what we're otherwise able to complete on summer operations as well.
To repeat what Alderman Nurbin was saying, if this gets turned down, you may still want to buy this plow truck. You might not buy some of the other stuff. Is that
correct? We would otherwise look at reprioritizing potentially looking at reprioritizing the list if we weren't able to complete an overage. I mean, unfortunately, we already took a year off of purchasing plow trucks, so we would just otherwise have to look at those that are on the list and then make our decisions and recommendations accordingly. So yes, if this is otherwise denied tonight, we would recognize that we have to work within our funding allocation and select the equipment therein.
Alderman Meyer, did I see your hand up again?
You did. I'm just as a follow-up. I'm just not sure that we should be basing our future needs on possibly a one-time bad event that we had this winter, which lasted for a lot of snow for that period of time. And yeah, it wasn't pretty with the way that some of the things were handled for plowing the streets. I think we did an excellent job for the way that the snow came down, the timing and all stuff like that. There was an excellent job in that, but, you know, I'm still not willing to, you know, increase that dollar amount because of a one-time basis with the way the snow falls. So I'm still gonna vote no for it.
Understood. I just want to clarify.
Director Lundin, do we want to respond?
I do, thank you. And understood and appreciating that it is not based upon the size of the event, it's based on the number of cul-de-sacs and the amount of road. The loader is all we have to otherwise clean up cul-de-sacs and complete the snow removal in certain areas. So whether it's a 1/2 inch of event or a 5-inch event, that's the equipment that we otherwise need to clear those areas.
We have more roads than we used to.
Yeah.
Alderman Schneider.
Oh, that's how I was reading it, is that the construct of recent roads has increased the need for this piece of equipment because of their design. They gave us a
Correct,
lot
and just to
of how long it took to plow with our current equipment versus in the cul-de-sac situation, how this piece of equipment would be more efficient and we could use our personnel more efficiently using it because it's quicker.
And it's a piece of equipment we otherwise would use. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
I'm sorry, Mayor, there wasn't a motion or a second.
Oh, we don't need.
I'll
those.
move to approve motion,
Thank you, Alderman Hanson.
resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, if you could call the roll.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
No,
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
and Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
And the ayes have it. The next item, Resolution 3836. This is for a 3-year median maintenance contract. Alderman Parrish, what did Public Works do with this?
Thank you, Mayor. We did recommend approval of this 3-0, and I would make a motion for such approval here tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Alderman Parrish.
I just wanted to throw in there, Mayor, that we did discuss a lot of your points and about the medians and how there's room for some improvement. That's not what this agenda item contemplates, and we left it there. And we did ask staff to have improvements in the medians as kind of an a la carte option in our upcoming budget process. So if we want to tackle medians as a whole, we can do that then. And we certainly, staff understands that we want to keep working on beautification of our medians until then.
Alderman Meyer.
just a quick question. Was last year Birchwood or was Northern the contractor?
Alderman Meyer, you are correct. Last year was Birchwood. Or up until this point, it's been Birchwood, yes.
Did we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
Okay. My only comment, and I wasn't going to mention it tonight, Alderman Parrish brings up, I sent an email to Alderman Parrish and Alderman Meyer, because he's expressed an interest in the past about both Wauwatosa Road and Mequon Road medians, and that perhaps we ought to care for them a little bit better since they're the entranceway into the city. Some of the beautification stuff, like maybe we should replace trees when they die rather than leaving piles of mulch with no trees in them, may be budgetary. Some of it is operational and could be done within the confines of the existing budget. And I hope to have further discussions with staff about that over the coming summer. But that's really not, it's germane because we're talking about medians, but it's not the primary purpose here. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
and Alderman Schneider.
The final substantive item on the agenda tonight is a contract for ash tree removal services. And Alderman Parrish, what are those other committees doing these days? It seems like it's all finance personnel and public works. Could you people in welfare and safety get something done?
Nothing at all.
All right. Alderman Parrish, what do you do with this item?
Thank you, Mayor. We recommended approval, 3-0 of Resolution 3837, and I would make a motion for approval of that here this evening.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Oh, wait a minute. I meant to call the roll because it's a dollar amount. We have to call the roll. Please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy,
I guess still aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
and Alderman Urban.
Aye.
After about 26 or 27 items on the agenda tonight, which is a long agenda, there is only one more motion to make. Alderman Garrow.
Move to adjourn.
Okay,
Is there a second?
second.
I heard a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. We got through in pretty reasonable time for the number of items we had on the agenda this evening.
Have a great.
Oh, thank you. And everybody have a great week. Talk to you
Bye-bye.
soon.
You as
Good
well.
night, everyone. Thank
Good night.
you.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.